Today I'm going to review and rewrite a resume sent to me by a candidate who's going to apply for McKinsey and BCG this January. Through this video, I hope to demonstrate a few key principal and common mistakes in resume writing that are not only of special importance for consulting applications, but also being transferable for almost, if not all, other jobs out there as well. This video is done as part of a run-up to an event we'd be hosting on MConsultingprep, where we review your resumes for free. If you are watching this video before the event, be sure to check it out. Link will be in the description and at the end of this video. I'd also like to express my sincere appreciation to the viewer who has sent me this resume and made this video possible. She wants her resume to remain anonymous, so sanitized it by changing her personal details. This is Kim Tran, founder of MConsultingprep and ex-McKinsey consultant, on how to build a consulting resume. For this video, I'd start by quickly going through the resume and talking about my first impressions, and then follow it up by an entry-by-entry analysis. Finally, I'd recap my analysis and grade the resume, assess how likely it is to pass the screening round, and suggest the next step actions for the candidate. Along the way, I'd relate to the fundamentals of consulting resume building, and through that process, hopefully, you can understand how a resume is screened and how you can make your own resume shine as much as possible in the eyes of a screener. Now I'd like you to take out a pen and a piece of paper. The best way to learn something is to do it yourself. I want you to review this resume with me. Before I start each session, you should pause the video and note down what you think, and then unpause the video and compare your version to mine. If you spot any additional detail or have any question, please comment down below. I'd be glad to discuss with you. And because this video is done to demonstrate the best practices, I'm going to be extra demanding and try to make every entry count, even every bullet. In reality, you should keep this mindset when preparing. It's better to be over-prepared than under-prepared. Okay, first impressions first. Here we go. Education looks good, Peking and Tel Aviv universities, both very prestigious. Good percentile ranking too, so that checks out. Going through work experience, not much of interest, honestly, except at the bottom, we have military experience leading 20 soldiers. Leadership and involvement. This one is actually better than work experience, especially the live music event and the Danaher project here. Additional information. This candidate apparently speaks quite a few languages that are not even remotely related. Visually, the resume is pleasing to the eye and easy to read, formatting is adequate and professional, and the whole thing fits nicely in one A4 page, so I think no improvement is necessary here. Overall, this resume has potential. For an undergrad position, it might pass through the screening round, but might is not enough, so we have some tweaking to do. Now, let's dig in. Now we deep dive into education. The first entry here is from a very prestigious school. In fact, one of the two most prestigious schools in China, with the other being Tsinghua, and a GPA 3.8, supposedly out of 4. At first sight, that's impressive. Going down one level, to the first bullet, what do we have here? Israel's representative to participate in the Future Leaders, supposedly a prestigious program. Quite good already, but could be made even better if she'd include how selective this whole process is. The whole point of a resume is to sell yourself, to sell your excellence, to say that you are the best candidate for a job, and let's be brutally honest here, better than other candidates gunning for the same position. Benchmarks, comparison to the mean, selection rate, etc., are the means you can use to make yourself stand out. Next, we have a scholarship. 2 awards out of 1,000 applications. This is what I mean when I say make yourself stand out. No improvement is necessary here because it's so good. The third bullet for this entry is about her thesis. I don't think it's necessary here unless there's something special about it. Personally, I'd remove it from my resume and use that space for other information, or just to spread the information out a bit so it's easier to read. Going to the second entry, we have Tel Aviv University. Personally, I don't know how good this school is, and a screener will not know unless he or she is from the region. So if you have your university ranking and your school is indeed a high-ranking one, you might as well put it here. Only one bullet point for this entry, and it alone is good because it says top 5%, but compared to the earlier bullet points, this one is a bit of a letdown. Overall, the education part is solid. Let's move on to work experience. Right off the bat, the first entry looks suspiciously like a customer service and entry-level analyst job, which doesn't bode well if you gun for a McKinsey slot. Applying for McKinsey is honestly one of those moments where they say they want people fresh out of college, but when you actually apply, they ask for experience. Not just any experience, but outstanding leadership and problem-solving experience on top of an outstanding academic record. This is the kind of reality you have to accept if you wish to claim a spot at these firms. Believe me, these are not the hardest ones. You have to try your best. Set aside some time in your college years to acquire real on-the-job experience. No amount of education can replace that. And for the people who were not fortunate enough, well, then we need to make the best of what we already have, and that's what we're about to do. First bullet point, solved 1,000 plus transactions. Wish, DoorDash, 90% dispute success rate. We have seemingly big numbers here, but that alone won't do. If I were a screener, I'd want to see real impact here. For example, how much money did you save for the clients by solving these disputes? What does success entail, and is 90% a big number? Also, how big is over 1,000 transactions? How do you compare to the other people in your team? I don't know, and with over 200 resumes on my desk, I'm not in the mood to try and find out. If I were the candidate, I'd write something along the lines of, saved X amount of money for big-name clients. Wish, DoorDash, Il Maquillage, with a 90% success rate, company average 80%. What I'm essentially doing here is instead of being input-oriented, I wrote it in a result-oriented way. Nothing says performance like having real results. The next bullet says, comprehensive analysis, 500,000 data points, key insights. We have one really big number and two subjective claims. Now, subjective claims are a big no-no in consulting resume writing, and even in normal resume writing, if you want to be really serious about it, you are supposed to show how good you are at the job, but not so explicitly. You need to do it implicitly using facts and numbers. Also, you don't always need to make your job sound big. Consulting has a lot of grunt work, small, tedious jobs done by consultants across all levels from the intern all the way up to, sometimes, the partners. The stereotyped image of a consultant is a well-dressed professional boarding a business-class flight to a fancy client office to make this big presentation about an innovative, groundbreaking practice that would turn the client business into a money-making machine. And so, candidates like to imitate this image in the resume. Big names, big tasks, big descriptions that almost never befits the candidate's seniority or lack thereof. The actual consultant, on the other hand, has to do a lot of tedious small stuff. They would be found hunching over a laptop on their business class seat, staying up till 4 a.m. making slides, only to wake up at 8, then hastily consumes their portion of overpriced sandwiches and coffee before heading to deliver a presentation that basically ends in 3 words: close the factory. The kind of people who survive that environment are the kind that not only do big things well, but are also willing to do the smallest and most tedious of tasks in an outstanding manner. For me, I'd write something like, help the company make a decision worth X amount of money by analyzing 500,000 data points in Y amount of time, Z% faster than expected. Third bullet point, led research project, presented to CEO, drove critical decisions. Okay, there might have been some unexplored potential behind this. How big was this research project in terms of member count or allocated budget? What was the decision that followed, and what was its impact? Was the research result so good it was forwarded to the CEO, or did the CEO specifically ask for this research so he or she has the necessary information for his or her decision? So I would write something along the lines of, led team of X members to research on Y topic. Results were forwarded to CEO, resulting in a decision that saved the company Z amount of money. Final bullet point of this entry says co-founded automated CRM solution, collaborating 5 staff levels. Again, there's no clear result or benchmark here. Was this CRM solution implemented, or did it stay on the drawing board or in the competition? The fact that something from a competition got selected for implementation is enough of an indication that it was excellent. This is what I mean when I say do not spam numbers in a resume. I made one video on that topic. Numbers alone do not mean much. On many occasions, qualitative facts matter just as much. For example, the procedure you made for the team got attention from the big man, and it ended up becoming the company standard. Also, I find the wording here a bit strange. Co-founding usually means creating an organization, but here she talks about a CRM solution, a software system. She might want to say specifically what she did to contribute. For example, designed an automated CRM solution within a 24-hour hackathon, solution was selected for implementation. That's one entry done. I decided to spend a lot more time on this one than the others, because it's actually a good one to showcase the principles. That said, in a real setting, this is not a good start. Let's move on to the second entry. Here we have a security officer on a cruise liner. She did this job in the gap between military service and her college education. She did this job for 1 year, and from what we can see here, there's not much in terms of milestones or achievements. But we are doing a bullet-by-bullet analysis, so let's dive in. First bullet, directed, communications, ensure dynamic crisis management, impeccable soundness. Second bullet, handled immigration procedures and checks, 5,000 passengers and 2,000 crew, safety top priority. In 2 bullet points, we have 3 subjective and unsubstantiated claims. The candidate will actually make this mistake throughout the resume, as we actually saw in the previous entry, and will see in the entries ahead. I won't dwell too much into repeating mistakes again to save time. Anyway, when building resumes, show, don't tell. That's not just for consulting resumes, that's for all resumes in general. So how do we fix this entry? To be honest, I don't really see how we can make this sound consulting-ish. Personally, I would not put this on my resume and instead save the space for something else. That would leave a small gap, but it's going to be before college, so it won't receive much attention. And here's a key point. You don't need to put everything you did on the resume, and you don't have to give them the full job description. A resume is supposed to be short and concise. It is a personal sales pitch, and in a sales pitch, you focus on the best features, in this case, your best achievements. If you try to include everything, you will end up diluting the sales potential of your resume. The third entry is about military service. Now we have something interesting again. The candidate served in an Air Force as a base security sergeant and, more importantly, had more than 20 soldiers under her command. Let's dive in. The first bullet says, led 20 plus soldiers, emphasis on professionalism and interpersonal relations. The first half the bullet starts out well, but the second half leaves a lot to be desired, because it's just a subjective claim with no result to back it up, or at least yet. Here this bullet can be enhanced by injecting a few metrics. For example, maybe her squad was less likely to be late than usual. Maybe they are more likely to clean their guns properly. Maybe they get in fights less often than others. I would write something like, led a unit of over 20 soldiers with emphasis on discipline. The unit was the least likely to break base rules, in example, get into fights, being late, etc. The second bullet says, established end-to-end, operations and training, visually documented processes, designed and implemented for other units and sergeants. I like this one. Basically what she did here is creating a process for her unit, to a consulting resume screener that hints at a potential for structured thinking required in consulting jobs. That said, the wording can be elevated further, and more results can be added. For example, improve training and operations efficiency, measured by average time to complete tasks, by X% using visually documented processes and newly designed performance strategies. Said strategies and processes were imitated by other units and sergeants. Also, this is the military, and for all I know, most peacetime militaries are riddled by bureaucracy, so the fact that she managed to actually implement her process is interesting. That would require her to deal with difficult people and convince them to change their ways. The third bullet goes, improved morale and productivity by over 80%. On the surface, this sounds good, and it probably does really reflect a real achievement here, but reading this, I can't help but wonder how morale and productivity was measured. When you put numbers in resumes, you don't just want it to be impressive, it should also be believable and easily understood. Generic and vague metrics, for example, customer satisfaction, is not really believable. Specific metrics, for example, refund rate, is believable. So if you want to say your product is really good, don't say customer satisfaction rate 99%. Say refund rate only 1%. What I did in the previous bullets was to use specific metrics and facts to demonstrate performance. For example, less likely to break base rules or time to complete tasks. I'm sure people in the military can come up with even better, more accurate metrics. I'm not in the military, so I had to whip up a few on the spot to demonstrate the theory. In short, this military entry is quite interesting, even more so than the other entries in this work section. There's one small drawback, though, that it is from quite long ago, in fact, before the candidate's college education, so it carries less weight than if it's from recently. As for formatting, this entry is inconsistent with the other entries. I would write it like this: Base Security Sergeant, Israeli Air Force. The candidate says Air Force only, but I presumed since she studied in Israel, she must have joined the Israeli Armed Forces. Let's now move on to leadership and involvement. For this section, the first entry is actually pretty interesting. Let's see what we've got in the first bullet. A fundraising live music movement intended to help victims of war in Ukraine involving about 20 members. And more importantly, she is the founder of this movement, so that's potentially a strong leadership experience. First event attended by over 300 people. There's no benchmark here, so a screener might not be able to comprehend if it's a big or small event. In fact, I was expecting at least 1,000 participants or so, because for me, that's the stereotypical local concert. So if I were her, I might write, first event attended by 300 people, average local concert size, about 100-200 participants. If that is indeed the case for that locality, or maybe you don't need to have a big event, you just need to do it efficiently. And that brings us to the second bullet point where she talks about fundraising. Team of 20, effective, high motivation, outperforming by 60%. Here she should not have included the adjectives, so effective management and high motivation, because the numbers would be enough. As for the numbers themselves, though, initial fundraising goal is a bit ambiguous because where the initial goalpost was. I get that she wants to demonstrate efficiency, but efficiency is not about meeting goals, but about delivering the most output with the least resources. So how do we demonstrate efficiency here? What I see here is that she probably had to somehow pay for these 20 people and for the things she needed to run the show, or even if everyone was doing charity, we might still have a payroll for the sake of measuring efficiency. And so to demonstrate efficiency, she might say the event had an X% profit margin, and preferably that number should be higher than the average, or something along the lines. The remaining 3 bullets were task descriptions, things that the candidate did to get to the second bullet we just talked about. Generally, they have the same problems: subjective claims and lack of clear results. Let's move on to the next entry. Capstone Project Team Lead for Danaher. That sounds like a professional experience. I wonder why it is here because I would put it on work experience. Considering that this is a strategy project, it aligns a lot more with consulting values. And so, if we put this at the start of work experience, it would make a much better first impression. That said, perhaps there is a reason. For example, maybe this is part of a competition hosted by the firm, and so it does not qualify as a job. Let's digress for a moment. Typically in a resume, you have work experience, extracurricular experience, personal projects, etc., so clean and separate sections. But reality is often more nuanced, and we have entries that might straddle 2 or 3 sections at the same time. In those cases, you might want to put it in places more valuable to the screeners. The general rule of thumb is work experience, then extracurricular, then personal. This is a very good example. This candidate's work history is not very impressive as it is, so this Danaher entry would make a wonderful addition. I actually see a lot of potential here, although it's again unrealized potential. First bullet, own strategy project. Findings suggested targeting SMEs. Okay, this bullet is being pretty descriptive, which is good. But then, did her suggestion get implemented? If yes, what impact did it make? For me, I'd write something like, led business strategy project of X members for Danaher's product identification platform, penetration into China, suggested targeting local SMEs, which when implemented overshot 6-month revenue target by Y%. Second bullet, manage pre-launch activities, coordinating marketing teams, promotional reach. Okay, again, no results here. How much reach did she get, and how does that compare to the benchmark? We need to add that. For example, surpassed key promotional reach targets by X to Y% while staying within budget. The benchmark here is the target and the given budget. Third bullet, liaised with parties, to procure formulations, requirements, and regulations. This is another JD bullet. You don't exactly need this bullet because it's the kind of administrative work that does not lend itself well to impress-sounding achievements. But let's stretch ourselves a little bit here. If you are doing procurement and compliance, what do you think would help you stand out? It tends to be cost-saving. That is, you can buy stuff for your company for cheap, and you can optimize the process so the cost of dealing with regulations is low. Also, I think these can be separate bullets, because procurement and compliance are 2 separate lines of work. Perhaps the candidate is trying to save space. Personally, I would not put in the compliance part, so I'm going to put something like that here. Liaised with internal and external parties to procure product formulations, often within 70-90% of given budget. On the third entry, we have what looks like a university club. Both bullets of this entry fall into the JD category. It's an old problem. The first bullet seems like a contest. So what prizes did the team win? Did her team outperform the others? If there was no prizes or favorable ranking, then I would suggest removing this bullet, because it does not add much value to the resume. The second bullet is about organizing events. Maybe we can add the number of participants here. For example, did she exceed the target number of participants? or we can talk about cost saving and efficiency like we did in the previous bullet. For this bullet, however, I have one other thing to talk about. It's a question I receive from my viewers and readers frequently. Should I include my inclusiveness and diversity initiatives in my resume? The short answer is, I don't think you should. I don't want to get into a political discussion on this channel, but let me just say that not everybody views these things in the same way, and given the political climate at the moment, that's still quite a bit of an understatement. That is so much different from, for example, work performance, or better yet, profits. Nearly everybody in business can agree that more profit is better, unless you compromise on other factors so much it threatens profit itself. So if you are drafting a resume for a business position, it should tell the screener how you can help the firm make more profit. On the other hand, putting political, racial, or religious things on your resume, especially when the purpose is to express your viewpoints, carries risks. For example, the screener might perceive you as being too outspoken on these things, which might hurt office dynamics, or she might disagree with your viewpoints, and so you get a bad rap. I know screeners are supposed to keep it professional, but I also know some screeners let these things get in their way, even at MBB, and even if they don't intend to. Given the competitiveness of these positions, I don't think you should take on unnecessary risks. The final entry of this leadership section is from the candidate's high school years. It is simply from too long ago and too different from workplace conditions to carry weight in a professional resume. I think it should be removed. Lastly, we come to additional information. This is the one part where I think many people put stuff in just for the sake of having something. For example, hobbies and interests. It's not that much of a problem in and of itself, especially if you are a fresh graduate with not much experience to brag about, but if you are an experienced professional with, say, 5 to 10 years in the field, you would want to keep this part short, just so you can save space for the other more important stuff. Okay, anyway, let's dive in. The problem for this candidate with this part is that she is listing skills that can hardly be quantified, that there is no proof of these skills, and that they all overlap with her experiences. So here's the thing, if you want to make this part count, you need to apply the same result-oriented fact-based principles as with the earlier parts. For skills and competencies, show certificates of skills that complement your work and leadership experience. And by complement, I mean it should be different. For example, if you are from business and have a lot of business experience, here you might want to show that you can do some rudimentary coding. Likewise, if you are a tech person, you might want to show that you learned the basics of business, accounting, finance, investment, etc. And you need certificates. Those from online courses are okay as well. Next, we have languages. This part looks interesting to me because this candidate seems to be proficient in 5 languages, the majority of which are not even remotely related. Learning 4 additional languages beside your native tongue is no easy task, so as a screener, I'd probably think that this person has some grit. And although there is no certificate here, it's quite believable considering her experiences working, living, and studying in these countries. I might want to add something here though, not necessarily for this candidate, but for the viewers. If you apply to MBB firms, they are going to require that you know English. So if you are just going to put your native language and English here, it's not going to add value, considering that the resume is already in English. Finally, there is the interest part. Personally, I don't think you should include this, unless you have something special, like winning a big competition, having a significant impact on your community, or something along the lines. But in those cases, you tend to have them in the previous sections already, so it's no use listing them here again. So how does this resume fare against an MBB screening round? I'm going to score this candidate on a scale of 1 to 10 on 3 key aspects: leadership and personal impact, achieving mindset, and problem solving. For leadership and personal impact, this candidate looks potential. It looks like she made her presence felt in the places she worked at. For example, in the military, where she was picked to lead 20 other people and managed to change some of the ways things are done at her base. I'd give her a 7. Achieving mindset. This candidate looks like a very hardworking person who is willing to do grunt work to make sure objectives are realized, considering her wide-ranging experiences. On the other hand, we don't have much evidence of actual achievements, since most of the bullet points on her resume are JDs. She did have strong evidence of academic achievement, though, and she's a fresh graduate, so this will carry more weight. I'd give her a 6. Finally, there's problem solving. In this regard, we can find some clues in her academic achievements, and also in some of the entries, such as the one at Danaher and in the Air Force. So there is potential, but it seems to not have been expressed properly. I'd give her a 6. So all in all, it's about 6 out of 10, which puts her at risk of getting rejected right at the screening round. At the same time, considering the increased likelihood of invitation to test that comes with automated testing, she might be able to pull through. We now come to the last part, which is recommendations. How should this resume be rewritten? First of all, the single biggest problem of this resume is the usual culprit of rejection in MBB screening rounds, a lack of clear results. So the next step in this regard is to add results. Remember, results can be numbers, but they don't have to. Secondly, this resume can be optimized by removing some entries and changing the positions of others. More specifically, the Danaher entry can be turned into a work experience. MSc cruises and the high school years should be removed. One final note. Looking at the gradings I've given in the previous part, the resume is fairly balanced. The candidate did this well, and she should keep this balance if she rewrites the resume. I attached a rewritten version of this resume in the description so you can check it out. This video is done as a prelude to a free resume review event we host on our MConsultingprep community. If you are a candidate wishing to join MBB or consulting firms, be sure to check it out and submit your resume. Our team, including ex-consultants, will help you review it. That said, with the number of resumes we will be receiving, it's unlikely that we can give this level of detail and structure to our reviews. To compensate for that, we will follow up on any questions you might have regarding your own resume or just general resume writing. Thanks everyone for supporting our channel, and remember, you can make it to consulting. That's the end of today's video. If you like our contents, don't forget to subscribe, like, and turn on your notifications to receive our latest updated videos. We also have a consulting community. Follow the in the description to connect with cool, like-minded people and experts. At MConsultingprep, we believe that everyone can make it to consulting. Are you a believer?